So, hi everyone, and welcome to Flash Fiction Festival, to this panel, which I think is going to be a very exciting panel on storytelling as resistance. And got some wonderful, wonderful writers here. I've been delving into their writing this week and just really excited to hear what they've got to say, to hear them read a little bit of their work. And I think before we get going with that discussion, maybe we'll just all introduce ourselves. So I'm Kate. I write flash fiction and short fiction. I also write poetry. I teach creative writing at the University of Hull. And I do write longer stuff as well, but I think I've sort of been kidnapped into the world of flash fiction. It's quite habit forming, I think. Um, Sheila, I wonder if you could introduce yourself first, maybe.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Sheila tōku ingoa. Sheila is Anandam. Sheila is my name. I'm a poet really, but I write reviews and I do interviews and I write essays and I write microfiction as well. So I just write lots of bits and pieces of odd little things really. I'm an Irish woman and I've been in Aotearoa for 13 years now. So kia ora, it's lovely to be here.
Lovely, lovely to meet you here. And Faithna?
Hi, my name's Faithna Trafrard. I am a Haitian American writer, currently in Mexico, and I write fiction broadly, but I like to dip my toe into speculative fiction, especially horror.
Wow, horror. That's exciting. I'd be interested to know how that goes with this whole topic. Have to kind of circle back to that. Fantastic. Ivaldo?
So, Emeraldo, I'm from Brazil. I am now based in the US, where I am an assistant professor of law and society at the University of California, Irvine. My main project is a family memoir, so mostly nonfiction. And the piece I'm going to read for you today is part of this project. It's interesting that, it has been read as fiction as well. That's something I'd love to discuss if we have time. But yes, so I love short forms, and that was my first experience with that.
Brilliant. Excellent. I'm already excited for where that part of the discussion is going to go. Efwa.
Hello, my name is Sifo Awuchumwa. I'm a Ghanaian. I live in Ghana. I'm a writer. I'm mostly published for poetry, but I do write short stories. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Lovely to meet you. Hi, Anton.
Kia ora, tēnā tātou katoa. I'm Anton Blanc from New Zealand. I write fiction and creative non-fiction, and I'm very fond of the short form.
Excellent. And finally, Victoria. Hi, Victoria.
Hello, sorry about that. I was trying to change my name, didn't work for me. So my name is Victoria. I'm recently graduated from college with degree in accounting. I enjoy writing. I mostly write short form like fiction, nonfiction. I publish most of my writings in my blog. Yeah.
Excellent. So I wonder, Victoria, would you mind reading a little bit from your piece to sort of kick us off, to get us going with this discussion, if that's all right?
Yeah, sure. The piece I submitted in email recently, is that one? Okay, give me a second. I'll pull it up. Just a part of it, right?
Yeah, just a couple minutes, maybe.
You can't really escape from yourself, no matter how much you forget past. It's remained truffle in a pocket, and sorry. Instrument travel in a pocket of your worn jacket, dust and old dineware behind the glass of wardrobe. The past is a gray brick that guards you, that drags you to the bottom. I'm sorry, I get anxious.
Would you like somebody else to read, or would you like to keep going?
Oh, someone else can read, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. It was a lovely start to it though, and I suppose I wanted to start with it because it's a piece that so intensely evokes the sense of displacement, the sense of being somewhere else, being dislocated. I don't know what other people kind of thought when they read it, but I felt I was really inside that experience. It made me feel like that I really empathized with the words that you'd put on the page there. So it was amazing to read it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm a writer, not a reader.
Who would you like to read your piece? Can you call it up, Kate, on the screen?
Let's see. I'm not sure if
Maybe to
I've
put it in chat or something like that, if you copy and paste.
I mean, I could read a little bit of it out.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. I'll read a little bit of it out then. Hang on. I've got it here. So, The Immigrant's Curse by Victoria Vosharenko. You will never belong in this city. Your speech, your clothes, and even your gait betray you as a foreigner. Your best friends do not understand your language. When you talk about your pain, you are met with discomfort and attempts to change the topic in the eyes of your interlocutors. You exit from JFK Airport onto New York streets. The evening streets, illuminated by the lights of advertising billboards, reflected against the wet asphalt. Every corner of this city is buzzing with dialects from all over the world, and you listen. Every time you hear and recognize the language, you stop. Every time you fight the urge to find their eyes, the ones to whom you can explain, the ones who do not need an explanation, who understand everything without words. You can't really escape from yourself, no matter how much you forget the past. It remains a trifle in the pocket of a worn jacket, dust on old dinnerware behind the glass of a wardrobe. The past is a grey brick that drags you to the bottom. These are memories that you always carry with you, stories that you will never be able to tell. So yes, it just really kind of captured something so powerful about the sense of the sense in it described of being so far from home and feeling so out of place, but also feeling dislocated from home. I felt like it got that duality was there really well.
Yeah, I think it catches the sense of you will never belong really well. That feeling of perhaps why you left your original country in the first place can be sometimes because you didn't feel you belonged there either. And then you go to another place and you don't belong there, but can be a sort of a more comfortable not belonging in a way.
Yeah, no, that's a really
This really
interesting way of
captures
saying
that,
it.
because trying to resist that urge to reach out to other people from that same place is sort of to do with that recognition of your own solidarity, I suppose.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. I really appreciate it.
So where did that piece start for you, Victoria? Did it
It's known fact about me that I'm an immigrant. I moved to the United States in 2018 when I was 15 years old, and I didn't speak any English back then. So yeah, it just I kind of put my own experience into it. Kind of remembered how I don't live in New York as in peace, but I remember how I first time like end up in New York. So that was just kind of my experience in a way.
Yeah. And I mean, some of the sort of sensory impressions, some of the, do you feel that it's almost more they're more intense because of that isolation. The narrator feels this kind of sense impressions of the world
Yes,
around
so
them.
if like a lot of people familiar with this term of short culture, when you don't belong play in a place you are from because you're so far removed from it already. Like I live in US for 6 years now, and you really don't belong here because you speak with an accent and you're a foreigner. So this kind of just feeling I was trying to convey in a piece, kind of you can't really find place because you're not your own back home, and you kind of doesn't fit here either.
Fantastic. So I guess a question that I was interested in hearing everybody respond to, maybe to start with, is that obviously you're all using storytelling as resistance, but in these amazingly rich different ways that are each very surprising different ways. But when you sit down to write, do you tend to know the statement you're going to make, or is it something that kind of rises through the work as you're writing it? So I don't know if anybody has a kind of sense of what they'd say to that question.
I'll go. I don't always know what I want to say, but I do know what is important to me, right? I'm interested in how humans and technology interact, um, especially like with the rise of AI. As a writer, I'm concerned about what that means for me. I'm also interested in the story of immigrants because my parents were immigrants. And the environment because I'm super concerned about the world that will be left behind for my children and their children if they choose to have them. So when I am writing like a micro piece or a flash piece, I like to just I'm guided by a prompt, first of all. And then secondly, like I write and think about what the story itself is trying to tell me. Sometimes there is humor laced in it because I think humor as a tool for not the main tool, but it can be laced as part of a story because especially for Black people in the Americas, humor has been a very important part of resistance. So even though I'm tackling these big things, focusing on a smaller aspect of it and using like humor or even horror because they use some of the same techniques, that helps me better say what I'm trying to.
Fantastic. That was such a fascinating answer. The thing about humor and horror, we're gonna have to I've actually got a question about the humor part of that, but we'll go around and answer this question first, but definitely want to come back to that humor horror nexus. So how about you, Araldo? Do you tend to kind of know what statement you're going to make with things, or is it more of a kind of instinctual process?
Yeah, so I work with interviews that I have been conducting with my mother. So my mother was sold into slavery by her white adoptive sister when she was 7 in 1968. And she disappeared for multiple years before my grandmother was able to find her again. So the beginning of the memoir is these interviews and conversations I have been having with my mother. I have been recording them, transcribing them, and so on. So sometimes what I want to do in short pieces that are part of this project is to allow her voice to resonate. But sometimes I don't know whether it happens with the other ones here. Um, I have some kind of conception about the form of the piece before I know exactly what I want to say in the piece. And so from this point of view, resistance is about the form, first of all. That's what happened with the piece I had for today. Namely, I knew I wanted to narrate in a poetic way a dream my mother had of freedom, but the form arrived before the content per se. I realized I wanted to write a piece in that particular form, and then it became clear to me that the best way of doing that was by, giving shape to my mother's freedom or dreams of freedom. So yes, in this case, the form came before, and it became clear to me that the form might be appropriate for this particular topic and for this particular expression of resistance. In general, I must say, I have been teaching about resistance a lot. Perhaps some of you know, I have been teaching a seminar about resistance, a writing seminar about resistance for almost 3 years. And what you see is a long tradition of scholars like Sara Mahmood, who say, look, we should be much more careful about seeing resistance everywhere. Teju Cole, as a writer, says the same thing. Perhaps some gestures of what we might consider to be resistance is not exactly resistance, but what interests me, independently of this particular debate, is how some kind of narratives allow people to refuse and start fighting against certain forms of domination and oppression. So my main concern, just to summarize perhaps everything I said and answer your question more incisively, my main concern in general is how the form, more than only the content, can allow the reader to start feeling otherwise about these patterns of domination.
Another really fascinating answer, and I feel like I should be taking notes here because we got the horror and the humor, which I'm desperate to find out more about, and then this idea of the form coming first, a form as a kind of resistance. I love that because it's something I want to know about Flash. Is it particularly suited, or is poetry more suited to this act of resistance? So hopefully we'll unpick these things a bit more as we go along. Anton, how about you? Do you tend to come at at things through theme or form, or do you know kind of politically what you want to say?
Yeah, I think I've been writing for 30 years, and I think I do have an overall kind of manifesto, and it was from my experience of growing up as an Indigenous person with a European father, knowing from sort of my earliest memories that I was different to other boys because of my sexuality. So all those, and also I think not being able to see myself in any text, like I couldn't see myself in films or books, or so therefore I felt my very kind of marginalized as a child and teen. So that really motivated me into writing. But what I've been thinking more about, sort of as we've got ready for this morning, is that it's become less self-conscious for me. I really just am writing about my life. No matter what I'm writing about myself, and I am processing my own issues. And I think that, whoever we are, when we live our lives kind of on the fringes of the hegemony, maybe because of our gender, because of the color of our skin, our sexuality. So then our lives become an unconscious act of resistance, even though we may not be aware of it, because we are living lives that run counter to the prevailing discourse. So it's kind of, I think it's just a natural expression of who we are.
That's another wonderful answer, and the kind of idea almost of, so what would you call that, kind of of memoir as resistance, or autobiography, or almost
Yes,
just kind of living as.
Yeah, and rather than thinking about resistance, so we then become sort of focused on the dominant discourse. I think more what I'm concerned with now is increasing the number of narratives And all of us have a unique narrative, so it's very important to me that my narrative is part of the mix. And I think when we do that, we begin to destabilize the hegemony, or or I certainly hope that we do.
Excellent. Yes, I hope so. Efwa.
Okay, so I think for me, most often, I live a lot with the things I want to write. As in, I am often thinking a lot about the things I want to write before I eventually write them. I love observing. Should I say, I'm always trying to interrogate the human condition and why we live the way we live, why we make the choices we make, why we are in the circumstances we are in. And I have come to realize that I am always writing towards clarity. I am always trying to, as Anton said, I think I'm always writing the same things over and over in hopes of finding clarity. And I think for me, I believe that if I'm able to find some clarity, write it down, and that provides some clarity to my readers, and it gives them the tool to be able to make some decision or to take a stand for something, then I think in that moment, I'm providing someone with the ability to resist anything. And for me, living with the story in that way is important. Whether it's a poem, whether it's a short story, whether it's a nonfiction, living with it in that way is crucial to my writing.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. And I think that's really true, isn't it? That when you're reading something and you kind of connect with it, often an isolated experience really feels much more shared. It really transforms the feeling that you have about something. Brilliant. Sheila.
Yeah, I think sometimes I come to the page and I know exactly what I want to say, and it's already there. Actually, I start to write, and the piece is almost completely formed, actually, and it just comes. And then there's other times I might just have a hook or something, and I have this sort of feeling, a sort of ghostly feeling, and I really am trying to express what that is, and I'm not quite sure of what it is. So I use that process of writing to clarify, as you said, Afua, what it is I'm thinking. And what it is I'm wanting to say. And often what I want to say is something I haven't heard before, or something people have not said to me before, or something I have not been allowed to say in certain circumstances, but I want to. So for me, the act of writing is resistance on a very, very personal level as well, because it's expressing something I feel I have not been allowed to express or encouraged to express before. And also it is creating refining a thought to the point where I know it, whereas I might not quite know it before. Yeah, and I don't know if the form so much matters, although I do write largely poetry or very short stories because I like brevity. I think brevity and speed for me have like an arrow. They enable me to get to the point quicker. They have a clarity to them. So, but I think all writing and the very act of writing itself is actually a form of resistance. Yeah, particularly.
That's interesting. So can you just unpick that a little bit more?
Well, I suppose as a working class Irish woman, of my sort of vintage, I was not encouraged to write. I was not really encouraged. My opinion was not really hugely valued. So for me, the act of writing itself was an act of resistance, because I was insisting on really having my voice heard, which was not something that was encouraged in the society that I grew up in. Also, as an Irish woman speaking English as well, I think the way the Irish speak English is itself an act of resistance, because we have shaped that language and turned it so that we have the sort of palimpsest or the echo or the shades of our old language within that. So for me, it was an act of resistance on that level too, actually, to use the language in that way and to wield it, I suppose. Yeah, and then there's also the idea of creating something that you believe to be beautiful or that you believe to be of worth, and that can connect you not only with others, I think, but very importantly for me, with myself, actually, and say,
that
I'm here, I suppose, really. Look at me. When I watched my children swinging on the swings when they were young, you know, and they would always be going, look at me, look at me. I did often think, God, nothing changes really, does it?
Yeah, that sense of connection and what you've just articulated so beautifully there, which is that feeling that it can be so complicated to express things. It can be so difficult that, you know, you spend so much of your life not quite being able to say things directly. And then when you have that chance of putting things on the page and they crystallize, it does feel kind of magic, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's hugely liberating.
I hesitate to put another person on the spot about reading, but would you mind reading just a little bit of your amazing?
Well,
I mean, I sort of think of it as like a flash poem or a prose
yeah,
poem. I mean,
it is.
how
And
would
this is quite overtly resistant, I think, too, which is, I mean, there's nearly this, which is not the way I usually write, actually, but I did feel moved to do this. Yeah, this is not a political poem. It's amazing what you might hear on the radio these days. Driving to work with half an ear open, I heard something, almost hidden among the muted clamour. I heard the phrase, rid from the realm of existence. It caught my attention, the alliteration, the almost poetic phrase, the vengeful biblical tone. An Israeli general with an oddly English accent, with polished diction, said, rid from the realm of existence, speaking of the Palestinian presence in Gaza and what should be done about that now in the holy light of their inviolate right to defend. Rid from the realm of existence, said with such clipped vehemence, such righteous fury, speaking of raising an entire people. I find my hands gripping the wheel, fists clenched. Rid from the realm of existence? I fear for the future of this world, which is full of such wounded, rage-filled men and women, so willing to wreak havoc, so eager for revenge. But what then? Rid from the realm of existence? Such things should not be said, they do not serve. Such brutal certainty punishes us all and only invites more posturing and pronouncing, more threatening and denouncing. Rid from the realm of existence? Nothing is inviolate. That is a dream. We know this. Everything and everywhere one is violated everywhere, all of the fucking time. Rid from the realm of existence? I think they will kill every last one of them if they can, while the world watches on, tutting, and thanking God knows what, that it's not them, not their children, not this time.
It's amazing, amazing piece, and beautifully read there, Sheila. That was lovely.
Not
And
my specialty, but
and I think what really struck me reading that was the power of the sort of anger and emotion in it. It really just kind of rips out of the page when you're reading that. It comes through that repetition, but it's such a strong tool of you know, kind of connection of getting people to maybe rethink things or think about things differently.
yeah, thank you.
And I guess that leads to my next question, which is, I mean, I don't know if you have kind of ideal readerships in mind when you're writing, um, but do you feel that flash fiction or short form fiction has the potential to change the way people think? I mean, does it seem to you more suited, less suited, or is it just kind of, does it not matter what form we write in?
Are you talking to me?
Oh, just to everybody. And maybe go to uh Faith now.
Um, I like to think of flash fiction as like in a amuse-bouche, like a little appetizer. Um, but I think what resonates with people, or what can resonate, is that since flash fiction is limited by word count, but in 1,000 words, the writer is able to kind of zone in or make the macro micro and vice versa. So they can look at bigger situations, or maybe even if you're taking a snapshot of your life and turning that into a form of flash fiction, the way that you execute it allows readers to really interrogate things about themselves as well. And I do think because just the way that our society is, where we're watching these short clips on pick your social media site all the time, flash fiction kind of fits into that because I think for some, like reading a short story of 10,000 words can feel laborious, but like something 500 words is like the sweet spot.
It certainly is, isn't it? It's funny with flash fiction how much you get used to it. I don't know if you have this feeling with short form fiction, but it becomes like this, like photographs or something. It becomes this like language that you bonded with so much that I think I do maybe pay more attention to those tiny little sort of units of text. What do you think, Gerardo? Because you were talking about form before, and kind of considering form almost before you start writing.
Yeah, no, I love this idea of making the micro macro and vice versa, Faithna. I think what happened with this particular piece was that I have been teaching creative writing for, as I said, a few years now. And I realized during the workshop sessions that students have two kind of problems with any kind of pieces, namely, either they ask for elaboration or they say that many things are confusing. And it kept, returning to my mind. At a certain point, I thought about, okay, what might I do with Flash to make it at once confusing and by refusing to elaborate on elements of the story. And that was the main idea. As I said, it was much later that I realized, okay, perhaps I can bring one of my mother's stories to this form. But what was funny is, it was published by Inkfish magazine last fall, but in the meantime, many magazines, including many important magazines that published Flash, said it's too short. It was always too short. So what I find interesting is how I think Faithna suggests the same thing. It's the process of trying to publish something short can be a gesture of resistance as well, vis-a-vis expectations about how long stories must be so readers feel comfortable enough at the end of the story that they feel they could understand what was happening in the story. My idea was with this formal reflection or experiment to think, okay, people can perhaps leave without certainty. They can perhaps read a short piece more than once. It can be confusing. Life is confusing. Life requires us to think, even when people don't elaborate for us, everything that is happening. So that was the main idea, to play with confusion and elaboration. And I think, yes, I think Flash was the perfect form from this point of view.
Brilliant. I mean, it's that ambiguity, isn't it? That sense that you're challenging the reader to find things out, to work things out, to put things together. It's a little mystery, and in that way, it's quite like a poem. And I think yours particularly has quite a lot of poetic elements in it, doesn't it? I mean, would you mind reading it out to us, your piece?
Sure, let me just open it here. So the title is She's There. That's what my mother dreamed, that when the slave catcher called her, she was far away from the master's house in the center of the sugar cane plantation, and that his voice was just a distant noise. Here, now, he said. So she rushed toward him. The plantation embraced her, the leaves like razors cutting into her legs, her feet already bruised by the stony earth. But his voice did not come any closer. A green, pathless labyrinth, colored by moving blood. Here, now, but without knowing where, there cannot be now. Silently, she ran away from freedom toward him, sure that her wounds would now itch and burn, that many stitches would be necessary, that she would need to ask the master to go to the hospital in the village later today. Where the hell are you? Don't make me go in there. Was that the familiar sound of the whip amongst the rustling of the cane leaves? Yes, in that direction, within a minute. The wounds now hurt much more, they now burn much more, but she's almost there, yes. She's there. His long arm raises the whip over her in a long gesture, as always before. Her eyes see the whip and the burning sun, and the master's house, and his tools. For a long second, she contemplates the world of Suga, where her childhood was consumed. His footsteps are now only a distant noise, the leaves like razors cutting into her legs, her feet already bruised by the stony earth. The wounds don't hurt anymore, they do not burn anymore. She's almost there. Yes, she's there. She's running toward it.
Lovely and beautifully read there, and such a wonderful piece. And I'm so kind of excited to read the larger project. You know, how long do you think it will be when you assembled everything?
So that's such a wonderful question. You know, one of the very interesting things about the job I have now is that, curiously, I have a dissertation on resistance and civil disobedience. I am supposed to turn this dissertation into a book project, but my university, my school would allow me to get tenure in creative writing. So I don't know what book I will publish before. I have been working on both books at the same time, but I hope perhaps in less than 1 year, perhaps 2, let's see. And so, yes, to be honest, what I have been considering more and more is how the full book might be a kind of combination of short stories like the ones I have just read for you.
Excellent. So, Efua, what drew you to flash fiction, and how do you feel that it fits with the idea of resistance in storytelling?
I think as Sweetna said, I like that when it comes to flash fiction, it makes the macro micro, and it sort of forces the readers to participate. I think it's easy to lose yourself in a lengthy novel. It's easy to come back and refresh, but with a short piece, you are forced to stay in the moment, and you are forced to interrogate what the writer is telling you and what you feel about it in the moment, because it's hardly long, and you have all this time on your hands as you are reading it. And I think that's wonderful. I think that in itself, the ability of a short fiction to force you to participate, to not allow you to just be a bystander, I think that in itself is an art of resistance. I think so often we are used to being the bystanders. I think the poem that was shared with us about Palestine, we are used to thinking, oh, thank God it's not me. And I think short flash fiction doesn't allow you that. It sort of forces you to think, what if it's me? And that may allow you to want to do something about it, even if you are not the subject of it, or make you want to think about what you could do if it happens. And I think that's one thing I like about flash fiction. That's one thing I like about micro stories, micro poems. That's one thing I like about them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's so, you put that so well. And I feel like it sort of crystallized something for me as you said it, that how the why this form is so well suited, that the exact thing that you said about that it doesn't allow the reader to be a bystander, to be passive, that it forces them to engage, to be active, it challenges them. And it's that very kind of ambiguity that Araldo was talking about, isn't it? That it kind of makes you really like maybe engage more than you would with other forms. Wonderful. Victoria, what do you think about this kind of intersection of form and resistance?
Yeah, definitely. Stephen King actually said in one of his books, a primary duty of literature to tell us about truth about ourselves by telling lies about people who never existed. And I feel like this quote just explains it so well about how we put certain characteristics that we cannot necessarily tell other people about daily life in these characters, and they kind of speak for us, and explain our feelings without actually telling everyone like, yes, it's about me, that's how I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that interesting nexus as well, isn't it, between you know, autobiography and fiction, between those two things. It often is there in Flash, isn't it, that you get into this territory where the two things are kind of juxtaposed. And just as you say, Victoria, it's like channeling your emotion or your experiences through a fictional form. Oh, that's lovely. Anton.
I think what flash fiction does, short form fiction, is it's really about a distillation, and I think that you can really for me, I want people to feel something from the writing, more even if they don't remember the story itself, that they'll remember how they felt when they read it. And you know, I want that to be a kind of an epiphany for them at the end of the reading, because I think that's the way that you get kind of a psychic shift where they understand me, and they might also realize, actually, I see that thing in me as well. And for somebody who has sort of felt has had quite a strong sense of being an outsider since I was very young, when I write, is what I find is the more I write, the more I feel I belong, because other people share my emotional engagement with the world. So quite unexpectedly, people say, "I read that, and that made me feel so sad," or you know, which is then I can kind of think, okay, well, yeah, maybe I'm not the outsider that I thought I was, that I'm actually part of rather than apart from.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing on both sides of that, isn't it? As a reader and as a writer. And some days you get one experience layered with the other, and then back to being a reader, back to being a writer. And those kinds of acts of community and connection are kind of amazing, aren't they? Um, I'd really like to sort of talk about this idea of the kind of range of tone that is in the different pieces, from like this incredible kind of polemical anger that's in Sheila's piece, to this sort of lightness and surrealism and humor that is in Faithna's and Anton's. And I wonder, Anton, would you mind reading us a bit of your amazing piece?
Right, let me bring out my piece. I'm at the Queer Festival, Writers Festival with Capote. A panelist hates one of my favorite films, Call Me By Your Name. I was disgusted by the privilege, they say, lip curled. The other panelists nod and chuckle conspiratorially. What fires your camp rage? The facilitator asks. Oh my God, women with babies, a Māori author retorts. There are titters from the crowd. I shift to my chair. The writers are multicultural, gender non-conforming digital natives with coloured hair. One of them wears a land back t-shirt. They talk about Palestine, social media, and online publishing. What about Te Tiriti, I wonder? We just survived David Seymour at Waitangi after all. Shouldn't we aspire to privilege? Isn't that the whole point? I asked my friend Susanna over lunch, so we can leverage social change. My parents always told me that this is the role of the middle class. They think privilege implies exploitation, so someone else is missing out, Susanna's partner, Kelly, explains. Writing and publishing are domains of privilege, Capote says with a wave of his hand, and it's full of faggots. I've ordered him an espresso martini so he doesn't fall asleep during the afternoon sessions. Capote takes a sip and lets out a quiet, appreciative hum. Even his sigh has the high nasal cadence that makes his voice so recognizable. When I introduce Capote to writers at the festival, they don't know who he is. I feel discombobulated and protective because a life with Pius has taught me how to love an alcoholic bon vivant.
Fantastic. I love that so much. The bit where Capote suddenly pipes up at lunch is just is this wonderful turn. And when no one recognizes him at the festival, just kind of such a vivid image. But it's interesting how different that is, like how what a different mode of writing, you know, because it makes us laugh, it makes us imagine. And I feel like those are just as powerful tools for making us maybe rethink. But I don't know if
Well, I was kind of turning fantasy into reality because I was engaging with these young queer writers who had who had no idea of who these people were. So they didn't know who Capote was. I talked to another trans friend about Quentin Crisp. I mean, they didn't know who these gay icons were. So I was exploring that and thinking about myself as a liberal, or I consider myself a liberal, and feeling slightly disconnected from what's currently going on. And I guess grappling with that idea of a generation gap within the queer writing community.
yeah, I mean it was just it manages to be so enjoyable and witty, and at the same time it made me feel, I don't know, it made me kind of think about things in such a nuanced way. So it was a really I suppose it kind of connects to the idea of satire as well, doesn't it? There's maybe an older form of resistance going back to, you
And
know,
and whimsy. I like whimsy. So playfulness and whimsy, but actually talking about quite serious things.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this connects back to Faithna's point at the start that I've been dying to ask more about humor and the role of humor. I don't know, Faithna, if you would mind talking about that a little bit more, humor and resistance.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want me to read my piece,
Mm.
but
Well, I wonder if you could, because it's quite long, isn't it? Can you read
yeah,
us
I'll just
like a
read
little?
like a page.
Yeah,
Um,
that would
but
be
so
amazing.
the thing behind it is that I had some friends who they got one of those robot vacuum cleaners. I don't know the
Like a
exact name.
Roomba.
Yeah. And my child and their child were both toddlers, and they just like beat it to death. It was on its way to the port, and they were doing what toddlers do. Um, but also the idea behind this is like I'm interested in it's so the story is called Grieving Ceremony, and it will appear in Nunum, which is a Canadian speculative fiction magazine. And
Oh,
I was
lovely.
thinking, what would it look like if we actually went to Mars and this is just like a regular Black family in space? Um, okay, Grieving Ceremony. The siblings gathered around the small metallic body of their beloved robot vacuum. Round, flat, and white, it was programmed to purify and recirculate the air in their room. It weaved between the clunky furniture of the living room, collecting microplastic particles before they had a chance to cause illness. Having beeped its last boop, it now laid unmoving in a shallow grave, cradled by the brown and yellow box of yesterday's deep dish pizza. The oldest child, Clementine, a wiry, bespectacled 9-year-old, came up with the idea to hold a grieving ceremony for the vacuum. A year before, a grieving ceremony was held for Grandpa Felix after he accidentally reversed his motorized chair into a bramble goose nest. Clementine was standing on the porch with Grandma Mia when she screamed the last word she'd ever say to her husband. "You're allergic, you fool." Clementine reached her cinnamon brown hand into the grainy earth and clasped a handful of sand. Standing somberly, she nodded for her sisters to do the same. And I'll stop there. Um, but when I think about humor in this sense, clearly death is not funny. However, how children conceptualize it is very interesting to me. And one of the things I noticed with this piece is like I gave all the kids orange names. And it's like probably because I'm from Florida, but also because of my religious background, like the end of the world and all these kinds of things were talked about a lot. And I'm deeply interested in how not subverting death, but different ideas of how death is not the end, but part of a cycle of life, are interesting to me. And I use humor here kind of to say like something bad did happen, right? R.I.P. Grandpa. But how his wife um, interacted with him in that scenario, humor can be laced in because I think older folks are just like, well, I understand that I'm going to die, while younger people are like, oh my God, I haven't lived to my fullest yet. And I think that's really interesting.
No, it's brilliant, and it's brilliant to hear your story. I'm kind of sad not to get the last line in there because that last line is so kind of laugh out loud funny. Um, but um, I just think because Flash is such a tight little space, you often get this humor and seriousness woven together really tight, don't you? This kind of braiding, like of real laugh out loud humor with these sort of dark moments, sad moments. And I feel like it sharpens the edges of both, like the two things butting up against each other kind of make each other more effective. So it's interesting, the idea of humor, whether it's satire, whimsy, kind of gentle humor, creating these resistance as well. Um, and you also mentioned that the kind of role of horror is that a separate thing, or do you feel that that feeds into the same?
So humor and horror kind of work together where there's a setup and then a punchline or a jump scare. And I think in doing this in Flash is skillful because you have to use the right amount of words, but also the audience have to feel like some kind of relief after being scared or, experiencing a moment of levity. And that's where I think the two share a space, but but also just like I think humor and horror are oftentimes used to subvert reality or reimagine a different kind of reality.
Yeah, no, that's a lovely way of putting it. And if we're um just before we get, because we're getting towards the end of the session here, and I would love to hear you read your piece. And that is also one that combines this really sharp sense of horror, to me anyway, when I read it, with a kind of a dry humor, like a kind of really, really dry humor that you kind of are reading into the story. So was that all right to read it to us?
Okay, so I'm reading Familia Meda. My husband can kill me. The day I find out, he walks in like always, feet dragged, hands loosening his tie, looking at me like he just found relief. I ask him how work was, like I always do, and he says tiring, like he always does. He asks me how home is. I say home is just as we left it. He does not ask about my work. I say nothing of my work. And I say nothing about her, of what I saw and might have been seen when I think back. The day I kill my husband, he shouts, "If you leave me, I will die. I will die." So I leave him.
Oh, wonderful. It's such a short piece, but it really kind of knocks you for six, that one. And the way you use the words is so careful. I mean, what kind of inspired you to write that piece?
I was just thinking about how sometimes women are manipulated into staying in certain relationships because they are afraid of what the other people they leave behind might do to themselves. And I felt like women die anyway when they stay in that relationship. It's also murder. It's also killing them anyway to be in relationships where they are unappreciated, where they die every day to keep the person living. And I just feel like it would be nice to actually work out when the person is trying to manipulate you with his death. It would be nice to say that, okay, fine, you can die. I am dying anyway every day. So why don't you die as well? That was the kind of idea, but I think mostly I just wanted to write something that lets people realize that you can't always be responsible for somebody's death. You can't always prevent it. You can't always hold them up to a standard they are not willing to hold themselves up to. And that sometimes it's okay. It's okay to choose your life as well. Yeah.
Oh, it's lovely, and a lovely way of putting that, and a lovely note to end on, that note of kind of connection and empathy and kind of inspiring people to feel that things can change. So it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you all, and to hear you read. It's just been lovely. I absolutely loved all these stories, and I'm going to be looking for everything of yours that comes out. I'm like going to be super fan of all your work. If for anyone watching, if you want to look up these authors and find out a little bit more about what they do, if you look on nationalflash.org, everybody's profile biography is there with links to their amazing work. So thanks, everyone.
Kia ora.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So